All right, so we're going to go over logical operators. So the following you should be comfortable with. So these are the following. Okay, so this one means does not. So like, for example, if you have the following, hold on, let me get, okay. If you have, let's say, the following, so this pretty much says 5 does not equal 6. So this will give us true because that's, correct. So, or let's say we have x and x cannot equal 6. So like, I don't know, if you have if you have an if statement and this is like the condition, x cannot be equal to 6. All right, and if this is true, then we would execute the following code inside the if block. But I think a lot of you know how to work with this one. I think these two are the ones you want to get more comfortable with. So this means and. So pretty much this is if two conditions are true. So let's say we have the following: x is greater than 4 and x is less than 10. So for this to give us true, both of these two have to be true. So that's pretty much how this works. So if let's say we have the value of 8, is 8 greater than 4? That's correct. So this is true. And is 8 less than 10? Well, that's correct. So this is also true. Then the combined output gives you true. If instead we have, let's say, 20, is 20 greater than 4? Well, that's true. But is 20 less than 10? That's not true. That's false. Then false, overrides everything. So the combined output is false. And this will be, and we can use this like an if statement. Like if this is true, we can like print out that, I don't know, the value of x is less than 4 but greater than, sorry, is greater than 4 and less than 10. So that's how that works. Okay, and then the last one is, this is an or. So pretty much if x is greater than 4 or if x is less than 10, then execute the following code. So this means that only one of them has to be true. So if we have 20, this one would be true, but this one would be false. But since this one is true, we would execute either way. So that's how this all works. So let's write a small program. What we're gonna do is, so pretty much we're gonna we're gonna collect user input of a number, and we're gonna see if this number is divisible by 2 and by 10. Okay. So let's set up our scanner. Okay. And we're gonna tell the user to input a number. And let's collect that number. Okay, so we're going to do an if statement now. If my number, so we want to know if it's divisible by 2. If it's divisible by 2, then the modulus of 2 of that number has to equal to 0. But we also want to know if it's divisible by 10. So I want both of them to be true. I want this number to be divisible by 2 and divisible by 10. So we'll add the AND option here. And my number, it's the modulus of 10 has to also equal 0. If these two conditions are true, then we would execute this code. So let's print out. This number is divisible by 2 and 10. However, if one of them is true, so else if, let's copy this. If one of them is true, we can replace it with an or here. Okay? If this one is true, or if this one is true, then just execute this code. So either oh, hold on. either. All right. Now let's see how this plays out. Input a number. Let's do 24. 24 is either divisible by 2 or 10. Okay? So it's I just realized if that okay, I just realized something. This one will never be true in this case. All right. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Sorry. But you get the idea of how this works. This one, but yeah. So yeah. Okay. But yeah, but that's how you would input the and feature. Like you would just input it here and then add the next block of code. All right. So now let's quickly do a quick example. So we're gonna do these two examples here. Okay. So assume that x is 1. Show the result of the following. Okay. So assume that x is 1. Show the result of the following Boolean expressions. Let me get red. Okay. So this one is true, and this one is false. So for it to be true, we have an and feature. So that means both of them has to be true. But so this one is true. So I'll put a check here. But this one is false. So this would give you false. Now let's see the next one. So x is 1. 1 is greater than 0. So this gives you true, but we have this exclamation mark here, which means it does not. So that means it's not true. So that means it's false. So this one is false, but this portion is true. But since this one is false and both of them has to be true, this one gives you false. Okay. Now let's see this one. This one is true, but this one is false. But since we have an or here, only one of them has to be true, then this one will give you true. Okay, now we have this one. 1 does not equal 0, so that's true. But 1 does not but 1 is not equal, but this one is saying 1 is equal to 0, but that's false. But since only one of them has to be true because we have an or here, this one will give you true. Okay, now we have 1 here. So 1 is greater than 0, but 1 is not less than 0, but since only one of them has to be true, this one will give you true. Okay, so this one, 1 does not equal 1. Well, we know that's false. 1 does equal 1, so this is false. And 1 equals 1, that's true, but we have the quotation mark here, so that means it's not true. So that means we get a false output. But guess what? We have an equal sign. False is equal to false, so that gives us true. Okay. All right, now let's work on this one. Suppose you run the following program. You enter the input 236 from the console. What is the output? All right, so this is 2, this is 3, this is 6. All right, so let's see what we get. So we call x is 2. Oh, actually, let's work on this side. X is 2, y is 3. So this part is true. Then we have y is 3 and z is 6. Okay, so this part is true. So this one will give you true. Now let's check the second one. So this one is 3. Sorry, this one is 2, my bad. This one is 3. And this one is 3, and this one is 6. And they're both true, but only one of them has to be true, but they're both true, but this one will give you true. All right. This one is 2, this one is 3. That's true because 3 is greater than 2. well, you have this quotation mark here. That means you get to take the opposite of it. So that means it's not true. So that this gives you false. Let me erase all this. Okay. Now, so this one is 2. This one is 3. This one is 6. We add these two up. 2 plus 3. That gives you 5. 6 is greater than 5, so that's true. And this is the same thing, but the other way around. 5 is not greater than 6, so this one is false.